Good evening and welcome to this remote meeting of Wirral Planning Committee. My name is Stuart Kelly and I'm the chair of the committee. This meeting will be webcast and a record retained on the council website. For those people at home who are viewing the webcast, I would like to inform you that if you look above the meeting, you will see a resources tab. Select this and the link to the agenda will appear on the right-hand side. This will enable you to open the agenda reports as PDF documents and follow the discussion debate. My role is to ensure the committee runs smoothly, having regard to procedures, behaviours and ethics. To explain who are with us online, we have planning officers, a highway engineer and an environmental health officer. They will present the applications and provide any technical advice that may be required. The council solicitor. She will give advice to the committee on procedural and legal matters that may arise. There is also the minute taker and of course IT support. The elected members will consider the applications and collectively make the decisions. Voting will be by roll call. The application will be introduced by the planning officers. Where there is a qualifying petition of 25 signatures or more, I will invite a representative of the petitioners to address the committee for 5 minutes. I will then invite the applicant or their agent to address the committee for 5 minutes. Statutory and local consultees may also address the committee. A ward councillor can also address the committee. Once representations have been made and following any questions of clarification from the committee, the speaker may not participate in any debate that follows within the committee. The application will then be open to debate and discussion by members of the planning committee, and we will then make a decision on the application. When making decisions, members may only have regard to material planning considerations. It is a matter for each member individually to balance these considerations and to decide what weight to give them. Members will also have regard to our local planning policies and to the national planning policy framework and guidance. A reminder for members. Keep your microphone muted and your camera off until called to speak. Ensure that the chat function is accessible to you. Indicate that you want to speak by typing your request into the chat function. Turn on your camera and microphone prior to speaking. Turn them off again when you are finished. When a vote is to be taken, the solicitor will call your name. We now need to just check all members are present and their equipment is working correctly. When I call your name, could you turn on your camera and then your microphone and confirm, please? So we'll start with Bruce Berry.
Hi, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Bruce Berry. I can see what's happening and I can hear clearly. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Andy Corkhill.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, present and correct.
George Davis.
Hi, Stu. Yes, all present and correct, Stu.
Thanks, George. Right. Steve Foulkes.
Yes, Chair, all present and correct.
Thanks. Samantha Frost.
Evening, Chair. Yeah, all good from my side. Thank you.
Excellent. Steve Hayes.
Good evening, Chair. Yes, everything's fine with me. Thank you.
And Kathy Hodson.
All present and correct.
Mary Jordan.
Yes, Chair, all present and correct.
Brian Kelly.
Yes, Chair, all's fine here. Thank you.
Ian Lewis.
Good evening, committee. Yep, I'm present and everything working.
Paul Stuart.
Evening, Chair. I'm here.
Thank you. Stuart Whittingham.
I'm here, all present correct.
And Irene Williams. Irene Williams, are you here? Okay, is there a problem with Irene's connection? We'll have a look, see if she's on the participants. Kathy, if you turn your camera off, please. Irene Williams is showing on the attendees as present. Perhaps she can't hear us.
Irene just
Irene?
wrote something in chat.
Oh, beg your pardon.
Councillor Williams has said she's got no sound.
Okay.
But if she turns her camera on, if we can see her.
Yes, turn your camera on for now, so that we can see. Or maybe you can nod if you can hear us at least. She's got access to the chat. Let me send her a message. Okay, she's put her hand up, but I'm not sure what that means. Does that mean yes or no?
If Councillor Williams can turn her camera on, even if she's got no sound, it says that she's muted at the moment.
Right. Okay, doesn't look as though she can. Bryn, I guess you'll have to, I don't know, mate, phone her up and get her to join us.
No problem, I'm trying now.
Okay. I guess we'll move on. So the
Just, Chair, I don't know if you want to give it a minute to see,
Okay.
because if Councillor Williams doesn't hear the full debate, she's not going to be able to take part.
no. Okay, we'll give it a minute. See whether we can establish a contact with Irene. Oh,
We have Councillor Williams.
okay, we can see her, but we can't hear you. You'll need to unmute yourself, Irene. You're muted. No, we can't hear. Irene, can you hear us? Can't quite see. That's better. Can you hear us, Irene?
If Councillor Williams can hear us, perhaps she could put something in chat to say she can hear.
Sorry, Chair, it's Councillor Brian Kenny. I've just rung Irene on my mobile and she's now on the screen, but she said she can't hear anything at all.
Okay, and we can't
Okay.
hear her.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay, can I make a suggestion, Chair? Because it happened to me the last time, if you remember.
You have a
Get
degree of
someone-
experience, yes.
Get someone to give it a ring and use a phone, and you can hear everything, and then you can see it as well.
Yep, she seems to be on the phone now, so I don't know. Bryn, are you in touch with Irene at all? Are you?
I've just tried twice to call. I'm not getting any answer on her mobile. I'll attempt my house phone. Hang on a second.
There you go, she's gone to answer it.
It's not me.
Okay.
Chair, is it worth trying Jerry? You might be able to get the message to her.
Yeah.
Could
I think
well.
if any conversation can be in chat rather than through the and
Don't know, Steve. Okay, have we made contact? Is there a likely solution in the next couple of minutes? Right. She really wants to be on the phone to Bryn though. She's on the phone to Stuart at the moment. She probably needs to be on the phone to Bryn. So Stuart, if you tell us to hang up and then answer the next call, which hopefully will be from Bryn. Okay, I'm not entirely sure where we're up to, but it's certainly been over a quarter of an hour to try and connect. I think I'm going to move on through the agenda in agenda order, and hopefully she'll be able to join us at some point. Okay, so agenda item 1 then is the minutes, to approve the accuracy of the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of June 2020. So again, thank you. We'll take them as read. Agenda item 2 is the Members' Code of Conduct, Declarations of Interest. Members of the committee are asked whether they have any personal or prejudicial interests in connection with any application on the agenda, and if so, to declare them and to state the nature of the interests. Anybody coming in for a declaration of interest? No. Excellent. We'll move to agenda item 3 then, which is the Marine Promenade, New Brighton, and I'll ask Matthew to introduce that report.
Is the plan up?
Yes,
the plan's up.
Yeah. Okay. So planning permission is sought for the inclusion of water-based structures on Marine Lake to provide additional leisure facilities. So the installation of a small number of lightweight structures will enhance the use of the lake as a tourism destination. It is not considered that the proposals would detrimentally affect the character of the adjacent conservation area, and a habitats regulations assessment of the proposed development has been undertaken that concludes there would be no detrimental impact on any site with nature conservation importance. The operational activities will take place between March and October. So the items that need planning permission are the SUP boarding across the top. I'll show you the details in a minute, and the aqua chimp ropes course. So this is the ropes course, which will float on top of the lake, and this is the pulley system that pulls a little raft across the water. So the lake has a long association with leisure uses and events and attracts visitors to the area. These additional facilities will enhance the offer available and will support the local economy, both in terms of New Brighton itself and the borough as a whole. Access for swimmers using the lake will be maintained, which would normally take place before the main leisure facilities would be opened to the general public. So you can see this is the swimming lane for the open water swimmers who generally use it first thing in the morning, and that use will be maintained for them before the rest of it opens to the general public. The proposals are considered to be acceptable, and there is no petition in connection with the application.
Okay, thanks for that. Any comments then from, who's this? Hello, Irene. Maybe not. Steve Foulkes.
Yes, Chair. Clearly a long story behind the development of New Brighton, and I think this is a further advancement of making use of the marine lake to attract people. It is a leisure resort, a place where people want to go, and it's been a great success. I was happy to hear the planning officer's comments about the recreational swimmers. During COVID, particularly with the swimming pools being shut down, I have noticed an increase in use, and I've spoke to a number of swimmers who were slightly hesitant, but reassurance has been given, and it will provide that attraction for people to swim, particularly in the morning, as the planning officer said. So I'm reassured by that. I'm also reassured. Well, I'll take it lightly. We've got letters of objection and letters of people supporting the application. Now, clearly, that is only a straw poll. If we had gone by that sort of measure as being a way of deciding a planning application, then the whole application and the modernisation of New Brighton wouldn't have took place. It was a difficult application to get through. But I think people will look back in hindsight and say it was the right thing to do and I notice it talks about commercialisation, but I think the right thing to do is commercialise. So this is really a welcome announcement at a point when we hopefully, touch wood, are beginning to relax some of the restrictions over COVID-19, and whether it'll be up and running for this summer, but certainly it's an exciting prospect for next summer. So I think it's something that New Brighton should have. It's something the Marine Lake can accommodate. It's something people will be attracted to, not just to go on it, but actually watch people on it. These things are quite entertaining when you're an observer from some of the great facilities. So I hope as many of the new facilities that are in New Brighton survive COVID, and this comes in before the end of the summer, and it will be a welcome attraction. And in the absence of, I'm not seeing anyone. Well, a couple of other people say they want to speak, but I'd be more than happy to move this application and propose vote in favour, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, I'll take that as a motion, but we'll take further speakers. That's all right. Brian Kelly.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was involved as a member of the planning committee when New Brighton went through its redevelopment a number of years ago, which I very much welcomed at the time. And I see this as another positive step in that direction. So I very much welcome this application. I also note, Chair, that the 3 local ward councillors for the New Brighton ward have all gone on record of stating that they're very much in favour of this application. My only question, Chair, is on page 15 of the agenda under 3 10.3, where it talks about further negotiation with the applicant has now been resolved and access for the swimmers can continue. My question is, first of all, is that a condition of the application, but also is this just a temporary issue whilst swimming pools are closed, or when swimming pools open again, will people still be able to swim if they wish in this area? But having said that, if somebody can respond to those questions, please, I'm very much in favour of the application. And I believe Councillor Foulkes has already moved approval. I'd be happy to second that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I think I'm looking at condition number 5, Brian. I don't know whether you have your report in front of you, but condition number 5 seems to address the issue of open water swimmers. Possibly Matthew could confirm that.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. It does address that issue. The lake is operated by the council, and we've confirmed that the early morning access, it's not for people who are, well, I guess they are using it in the absence of indoor pools at the minute anyway, but there's an outdoor swimming group that use the pool, and they tend to do that first thing at the lake. They tend to do that first thing in the morning, and they were concerned that these proposals they would lose access to their swimming lane. But the lane is to be maintained. It's shown on the plans as well, and the plans are conditioned to be built in accordance with those plans. So the swimming lane will be maintained, and access to the open water swimmers will be allowed as well.
Okay, thanks for that, Kathy Hodson. Thanks for putting your hand up, Kathy. If you turn your camera on and your microphone, then you can speak to us. There she is.
It's still on mute.
Yeah, you're with us. Yeah, you'll need to unmute yourself, Kathy. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Okay. It's my
more expensive mouse.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, keep sticking. I was just responding to Councillor Steve Foulkes' recommendation to approve, and I was saying that I would second the motion.
Okay, thank you very much.
Chair, just to clarify, I think Councillor Kenny has already seconded the motion.
He'd certainly jumped in, yes, not to worry. Any other contributions?
Through you, Chair. I had actually typed it at 6:25 p.m. that I would second, but I don't really mind who seconds it, to be honest. So if Brian wants to, that's fine by me.
Okay. Any further contributions? No. Okay, so we have a motion by Steve Foulkes, moved by Steve Foulkes, seconded by Brian Kenny, to approve the application. Everything's in the report. I agree with what's been said. I think it will be a net asset for the area. So we can ask the solicitor to get ready. Voting will be for, against or abstaining on the motion. The solicitor will call your name. Please turn on your camera and microphone and say who you are before voting. Members should only cast a vote if they've heard the planning officer's presentation and the debate in relation to this matter in full and have not had any technical difficulties during this item. In the event that you have had problems hearing the discussion, you should not vote and indicate not voting when called. I'll hand over to Cecilia.
Thank you, Chair. If I can call on Councillor Bruce Berry.
Councillor Bruce Berry, I'm voting for.
Thank you. Councillor Corkhill.
Councillor Andy Corkhill voting for.
Thank you. Councillor Davies.
Councillor George Davis voting for.
Thank you. Councillor Foulkes.
Voting for Councillor Steve Foulkes.
Councillor Frost.
Cllr Sam Frost voting for.
Councillor Hayes.
Councillor Steve Hayes voting for.
Thank you. Councillor Hodson.
Councillor Catherine Hodson voting for.
Thank you. Councillor Jordan.
Councillor Mary Jordan voting for.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Stuart Kelly voting for.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny.
Councillor Brian Kenny voting for.
Thank you. Councillor Lewis.
Cllr Ian Lewis voting for.
Thank you. Councillor Stuart.
Councillor Paul Stewart voting for.
Thank you. Councillor Whittingham.
Councillor Stuart Whittingham voting for.
Councillor Williams.
Okay. So
Councillor Williams is currently muted. As she's on the telephone, she will need to press 6 and then star on her keypad to unmute.
Okay. Did you hear that, Irene? Are you able to come in and indicate whether you'd heard the presentation or not? Okay, no, I don't think we've got it, have we?
No.
Okay. Okay.
I'll record Councillor Williams. I know she's had technical difficulties. I'll return do it as not voting.
Not voting.
And in that case, we have 13 votes in favour with 1 not voting.
Okay. Okay. That application then has been approved. Okay, so we move to agenda item number 4, which is the Bungalow, Thornton House, Thornton Common Road, Thornton Hough. If we can ask Matthew to introduce the report, please. The plan's up.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Chair. So planning permission is sought for the erection of a new dwelling adjacent to the bungalow in Thornton Hough. You should be able to see the proposed site plan up on your screen now. So the site edged in blue is the existing host dwelling, which is the bungalow, and then the site edged in red is the proposed development site with the new dwelling here in the bottom of the site. So the site is located within the heart of Thornton Hough Village, which is shown on the Unitary Development Plan proposals map as an infill village in the Greenbelt, within which new infill development may be permitted subject to criteria set out in policy HS4 criteria for new housing development. The site is also located within Thornton Hough Conservation Area. The application seeks permission for a 2-storey dwelling. You can see the elevations on the screen, hopefully in front of you now, with the first floor contained within the roof space. The footprint of the new dwelling would be approximately 104 square metres, and the height of the new dwelling to its ridge would be 8.7 metres. There are a mix of house types in and around the immediate locality of the site. So the Thornton House to the southeast that's just off plan here. You can see it on the small plan in the top right-hand corner here. This is Thornton House. It's a large 2 and 2.5 storey house that has been converted into 5 dwellings. It's also a listed building. The host dwelling to the west, that's this property hatched here, is a bungalow, and immediately to the north is Sandy Lodge, that's here. That's a 2-storey dormer bungalow. Beyond this, there is a mix of 2-storey and single-storey dwellings, all of differing sizes and appearance. The new dwelling would be accessed by way of a shared private access road, which in turn accesses Thornton Common Road. The new dwelling is sited to avoid any overlooking into habitable room windows on the bungalow, and separation distances are achieved in respect of all other neighbouring properties. The new dwelling is set off between 3 metres and 9 metres from the rear garden of the bungalow. So this corner of the new dwelling is approximately 3 metres off the boundary with the bungalow, and this corner here is 9 metres off the boundary, just over 9.16. This has the potential to result in some overlooking of the southernmost part of the garden area to the south of the bungalow. However, this is the applicant's garden, and therefore less weight is given to the impact on the applicant's own garden. Additionally, there is another garden area north of the bungalow that retains private amenity space for the occupiers of this dwelling. That's this area here. The design of the new dwelling, together with the materials proposed, is considered to be used in its construction, are considered to be of good standard that would fit in well with the surroundings. On balance, the proposals are considered to be acceptable and are recommended for approval. There's no petition in connection with this application.
Okay, thanks for that. I think we have Cherry Purvel remove the matter from delegation. I wonder if we could have Cherry to speak to us. She's objected.
Thank you, Chair.
Excellent.
Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes, we can hear you.
Right. I wish to oppose this application on behalf of the residents of Thornton Hough. I believe you have received 35 individual letters of objection. This application should be considered as overdevelopment insofar as the density of the development is not in keeping with the density of the adjacent properties within the conservation area under UDP HS4 and certainly does not enhance it. There are 5 properties that this proposed development will have a detrimental effect on the amenities to each, which will result in preventing each of them enjoying their right to privacy. The proposed 2-storey dwelling will result in overshadowing to the owners present and future of Thornton House, which is a listed building, Sandy Lodge and the bungalow. Firstly, the windows on the side elevation are unacceptable to number 5 Thornton House, which, as shown on the plans, overshadows their property. This is greatly exacerbated by the change in levels, which is up to 5 metres high, which has not been acknowledged in the plans. Secondly, the windows in the front elevation will give rise to overshadowing to the detriment of numbers 3 and 4 Thornton House, present and future occupiers, depriving them of privacy. Sandy Lodge Bungalow will be similarly affected, standing on what was formerly the garden and kitchen buildings belonging to Thornton House. The plans to build a 2-storey house will have a detrimental effect on current and future occupiers' right to privacy. Turning to the bungalow. Residents of the applicant. The construction of this 2-storey house will have a detrimental effect on the bungalow in that it will completely overshadow the garden. Whilst this might not be of concern to the applicant, it almost certainly would be to any future buyers of that bungalow. Why is the planning department prepared to allow this situation, which almost certainly would not have been allowed had the occupant of the bungalow been a third party? It is not acceptable to allow lower standards to apply to one person and not to another. Lower standards should not be allowed per se. It is clearly not acceptable to build a property now that will clearly cause problems not only to the existing neighbours but to all future ones as well. There is then the issue of the walnut tree, which has the benefit of a TPO, and this is just to the side of the bungalow, the existing bungalow. The proximity to the proposed dwelling has the potential to impact on the longevity of this tree. This assumes, of course, that no damage is done to the root system during construction. There is at present evidence of damage to the wall belonging to Thornton House, which has been attributed to the applicant. Additionally, I'm given to understand that there are bats roosting in the vicinity of this walnut tree, which is also of great concern. To summarise, I would respectfully suggest the plans to build this two-storey property that overshadows the amenities of 5 other properties within the immediate vicinity is unacceptable within the conservation area. The fact that there appears to be a proposal to allow this development to go ahead, lowering the standards that are expected from each and every other development, is not acceptable. Standards should be universal. I therefore request the Planning Committee to take these points into consideration and refuse this application. Thank you, Chair.
And Chair, you just hang on there. We'll see if there's any questions for you from any members of the committee. Anyone, any questions for the Ward Councillor? No, that's fine. Okay, so thank you very much for that. I'll now invite Alice Mellor, the agent for the applicant's agent, to rejoin us. Alice, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Am I right to speak now? Or?
Well, I was just going to say that in common with the objector there, you'll have 5 minutes to address us. So if you, I'll let you know when you have about a minute left.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so my name's Alice Mel and I work at Shack Architecture in Heswall and I'm the agent for the application. So the applicants approached Shack Architecture in June 2019 after having purchased and renovated the Bungalow, which is a late 20th century building with an garage site. Thornton Hough is defined as an infill village under policy GB7 and under policy GB6 there's potential for new development on infill sites within the green belt. We believe the site would be ideal for infill development as it's in the centre of the village in a pocket of late 20th century buildings where infill development has been accepted in the past. The site, despite being geographically located in the centre of the village, cannot be seen from any of the main roads or the key views set out in the conservation area appraisal. So as set out in the UDP policy CH2, the new development within a conservation area must preserve or enhance the distinctive characteristics of the area, including important views, the general design and layout of the area and the character and setting of period buildings. And then in relation to Thornton Hough in particular, it states that developments must retain the compact settlement pattern and preserve the scale, variety of design and building materials within the buildings. So the pre-application advice that we received in September deemed that the proposal was not in breach of these policies. So the main concern throughout the design process was the relationship with Thornton House. Over time, the open area around Thornton House has become increasingly eroded, not just with the dwellings, but with the subdivision of private gardens. Given the development of Sandy Lodge and the Bungalow, the development on the application site would not be of significance to the open setting around Thornton House. This is due to the natural screen of trees and hedging along the boundary. So we worked with an arboriculturalist to determine the most appropriate treatment of the existing trees and hedges, considering their health, size and life expectancy, and produce a management and enhancement plan, which is part of the application, and it includes planting new birch trees, which are local to the area. The development area considers the root protection tree areas of the retained trees, and it is not deemed to adversely affect them. In terms of wildlife, the ecological appraisal accepted by MES states that the trees have negligible bat roost potential, and any impact on breeding birds' habitats will be prevented by not undertaking any of the works to trees during the breeding season. In terms of access, the site is accessed from a private drive off Thornton Common Road, which already serves a lot of other houses, and the local highways authority do not raise any objections to this. Within the site itself, there's sufficient parking in the leaving space, and it will have a large amount of green space to front and rear lawns. So onto the design, it's for a 4-bedroom detached house. It's 164 square metres and the footprint is around 104 square metres, which is actually smaller than both the Bungalow and Sandy Lodge. The position of the dwelling on the site was defined by the separation distances of the surrounding buildings and the root protection areas of the trees, and it's well within the required separation distances. It's also cited so that the new dwelling and the bungalow can be read as separate entities from the site entrance, and due to the orientation there won't be any undue overshadowing or overlooking of the other properties. So when designing in a conservation area, we consider the overall scale and massing of the proposal as well as the detailing of the materials that should be used by researching the surrounding context. In this case, our design philosophy was using elements of traditional design found around the village, but reimagining them in a more contemporary way. The contemporary design is more honest to the present day and would reflect when it's constructed, creating a building that's of its place and time rather than kind of mimicking the historic buildings around it. So this is achieved by using high quality, locally distinctive materials such as red sandstone, fender and blackened timber. The bay windows to the front and rear will create features that echo the timber framing of the historic buildings around the village, whilst the sandstone wraps around the front and the side, and that faces Thornton House so that anything that could be seen through the screening would be in the traditional material. And although a flat roof would have reduced its mass, pitched roofs have been designed to fit in with the surroundings, and the eaves have been lowered so that it's not fully two-storey, and that reduces its massing further and creates the feature gables and bay windows as I've described. So
you have 1 minute.
Okay, just concluding. In conclusion, the planning officer has recommended the application for approval as it complies with all the relevant policies as outlined in their report, and we therefore ask that the committee will follow that recommendation and grant approval. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just ask if any members of the committee have any questions of clarification of the applicant. Let's see if anybody types in there. Ian Lewis has a question.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened to what Ms Mellor had to say to the committee on this application. I also heard the concerns outlined by Councillor Povall. Could Ms Mellor tell us, prior to the application being submitted to the department, was there any consultation with local residents about the application or with the Thornton Hough Community Trust about any concerns that they may have, and were those concerns reflected in the final application, please?
No, there wasn't before the application was submitted. I believe the client may have kind of gone around and knocked on the neighbours' houses, and ever since he moved in, he'd had this idea that he would develop the site. So I think it was always mentioned to the immediate neighbours. But then following the objections, we've changed the landscaping layouts and just tried to firm up the design and the screening, which was the main concerns, just to kind of negate any of the concerns that the surrounding neighbours might have.
Okay, thanks. Any further questions? Okay, nobody else. Thank you very much. Just turning back to Matthew. Councillor Povall mentioned density overlooking and the maple tree. I don't think I've noticed the maple tree in the report. Could you give us the benefit of your advice on density and the maple tree and the overlooking?
Was it not a walnut tree?
Oh God, probably. Yes,
it's a walnut tree, not a maple tree. I'm going to put the plan back up. I think it's probably easier to talk to the plan.
Okay. Turn your camera off, Kathy.
So can you see that plan now?
Yeah.
Okay, so the orange hatch, that's the walnut tree, and the walnut tree is to be retained, so it won't be removed, and both the conservation officer and the council's tree officer are happy with the proposals in terms of the impact on that tree and other trees along the boundary. In terms of density, so the density of this subdivided plot would be pretty similar to the density of the bungalow, similar to the old powerhouse here. There's two properties here, 1 and 2 Rosaries, which is a much higher density and then will be proposed here. And then if you look at the site location plan, densities generally in Thornton Hough and the core of the village are pretty high with small plots and large properties within small plots. So this proposal is actually a lower density than some of the existing properties in and around the core of the village.
Okay. Could you put up the elevations and just indicate which elevation presents towards Thornton House and which one will present to the bungalow garden?
Yeah. So this block here, which I'm just highlighting with the little hand, is Thornton House. So you can see number 5 here. This is number 4, number 3. It was a large property that's been subdivided into 5 dwellings. So the elevation that will face Thornton House is this one here, and so it's this elevation. This is the elevation that will face Thornton House, and the windows on the ground floor are secondary windows to the kitchen. This window here is an ensuite window, an ensuite bathroom, and this window is to an internal walk-in closet, which you can see on these floor plans. So there's the closet, there's the ensuite bathroom, and this is the kitchen area with the two windows. In terms of what we'll look onto the bungalow, so again, it will be primarily the first floor windows that would result in any significant overlooking, and there are 2 bedrooms. There's bedroom 2 and bedroom 3. Sorry, that's wrong. No, it isn't. It's right. That will overlook the bedroom, and if I go back to so this is the garden area with the bedrooms that will overlook, and the elevation is this one here. So it's the rear elevation that would overlook that part of the rear garden. I think I gave you the separation distances.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Open to Amazon. Steve Hayes, your question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Sherry Pavel sort of mentioned that the walnut tree, the bats were in the actual tree or perhaps roosting yet. I was just wondering whether there has actually been a bat survey at all of recent.
There has, and it's all been signed off as being okay, and the application has been looked at in that regard in terms of its impact on the trees, any ecology, and the conservation area, and all the relevant experts are happy with the proposals as they've been set out.
Thank you.
Okay. Kathy Hodson.
Thanks, Chair.
You've muted yourself again, Kathy. We can't hear a word you're saying. Yes, your sound's off.
Okay. Is that all right now? On 3.41 of the development plan, the site is designated as part of the green belt, a conservation area and an area of special landscape value. And it's part of an infill village within the green belt under GB7. So under 3.55, the National Policy Planning Framework goes on to indicate that the local planning authority should regard the construction of new buildings as inappropriate within the green belt unless the development falls within one of 7 specific exemptions, one of which is limited infilling within the village. My sort of observation is that there's infilling and there's infilling on top of infilling. Under 3.61 assessment, the main issues pertinent in the assessment of the proposals are, amongst others, the amenity of existing neighbours and potential future occupiers. And then we go on 3.10.1, that there's a close relationship between the rear of the dwelling and the southern garden to the bungalow, which will result in the area being overlooked by first floor bedroom windows. And then, this which is quite pertinent, as the bungalow is not a third-party dwelling, the close relationship is not harmful to amenity. But my view is that there's a little bit of a conflict of interest between the fact that the applicant is the person who would be receiving the overlooking. So if you took them out of the equation, that you disregarded who the applicant was. Because we need to take into consideration the amenity value for potential future occupiers, should we ignore the fact that the applicant is the person being overlooked? Because they've got a conflict of interest, haven't you? That they're selling the property, they're building the new one, so they might not be bothered that they're overlooked. But if we have a duty of care to potential buyers, that their amenity value is preserved, should we then, in effect, refuse the application on the basis that the amenity value of this property is reduced for potential buyers, even if the current occupier is not bothered?
Shall I comment on that?
Question, yeah.
Okay. So I think as it's outlined in the report, we're not saying that the impact of the amenity of future occupiers, or indeed the current occupier, should be overlooked or ignored. But we're suggesting that it should be given or afforded less weight than if the inhabitants of the bungalow were third party and not connected to the application site. And the reason for that is that clearly, as the applicant, they will be aware of any potential impact that the proposal will have on their amenity. And the loss of amenity really concentrates on the garden area as opposed to any habitable rooms. So we've taken on balance that clearly the applicant is aware of the potential for impact to their property and accepts that as a given, and has raised no objections to that. In terms of future occupants, I mean, the planning system largely serves to protect existing residents who are having development imposed upon them. So if you were a future resident looking to buy that property, you would be fully aware of the impacts of that property when you went to view it, and it would be a choice that you would make then as to whether or not you bought it, having full regard to the impacts that may result, as opposed to someone who lives there and has those impacts imposed upon them. So we're not saying ignore them. We're just saying that in this instance, because of the circumstances, and it's a garden area as opposed to habitable rooms, and there is another private garden area to the north of the bungalow that could be used quite privately as well. We've given less weight to those impacts in this instance.
Okay. Any other comments or contributions? Steve?
Yes, Chair. I went up the site again this afternoon. I've been twice now to look around, and the thing I picked up is the only thing that's uniform about Thornton Hough Village is its non-uniformity. There's a whole host of different styles, properties, and this issue about whether the garden's overlooked, I could probably pick 2 or 3 houses in the village that overlook someone else's garden. So I'm not putting an immense amount of weight on that. My main issue, and I have asked this before prior to committee, whatever the new local plan would look like, or whatever planning is in existence now, this type of development within the green belt as an infill on a existing village would be permissible. That is one of the areas that wouldn't change whatever, because national policy guidance would probably prevail over anything we did locally. So it's all about a measure of what people believe to be whether there's detrimental harm to the village itself. Now, I suppose the only safe bet in a picture box village like Thornton Hough is to do nothing. We're not being presented with that position of doing nothing. We're being presented with a perfectly sensible, well thought out, well designed, and we have dealt with good and bad architects on the Wirral over the years, well designed, and that can fit on that plot. So they, in my mind, they are the things that I've been weighing up. And if I wanted to go out and defend a reason for refusal, I think it would be a difficult one. And so whoever moves a reason for refusal will probably have to defend this at an inquiry or a local inquiry. So I just put those thoughts out there. At the moment, my view is to support the officer's judgment on this and support the application. If anyone else would like to speak, but I think we need to sort of round up. Thanks, Chair.
Steve Hayes.
Yeah, just a brief comment, actually. I sort of had a couple of concerns as outlined by Councillor Cathy Hodson, and I was just wondering whether, because this is an infill on the green belt, and obviously in the future if the house was to sort of be sold on, or two different occupants and one was overlooking the other, and when someone would come to view it and think, how was this ever allowed to be done on the green belt? And I'm just wondering, should more consideration be taken away from the fact that you have the same, that it's the owner that's going to be overlooked in this particular case? Does the fact that it's on the green belt add less weight to that fact, if you know what I mean?
Well, through you, Chair. I mean, it's in the green belt, but it's not in the green belt in the sense that it's an infill plot within the heart of the village, and the whole of Thornton Hough sits within the green belt, and so Thornton Hough, along with a couple of other villages, are what's called infill villages within the green belt. So because this plot is within the core of the village, although it's within the green belt, it is permissible, and it's outlined as one of the exceptions in the National Planning Policy Framework as well, to allow residential development as an infill plot in these sorts of villages. I mean, if it was on the outskirts of the village or within the green belt itself, the main green belt, then clearly we would be looking at a different set of circumstances and a different set of criteria against which we would have to weigh into the balance. But this is an infill plot within the heart of the village.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, Steve. Mary Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. Following on from Steve Hayes, I do feel that this is a lowering of standards, and I'm somewhat confused. I feel like Sam from Sky, actually. A month ago, we spent 2 hours debating the fact that the residents of a proposed application were not a material planning consideration. Now we're saying that, well, we can just forget about them. And to me, that's double standards.
No, I'm going to come back on that and correct the councillor, if I may. That was occupancy that we were talking about in relation to a proposal for new residential flats that were outlined for use by people who were either homeless or looking to move on to accommodation. That was about occupancy rather than this issue of privacy or overlooking. That's what this boils down to. It's not about occupancy.
Okay, Mary, want to come back?
Yep, I do want to come back. I do have words for refusal, and I will wait for everybody else to have their say, and then I'd be grateful if I can have mine. Thank you.
Okay. Any other members have any questions or comments, or should we have a look at what Mary is considering putting before us. And then we can discuss. We'd probably be better if we discuss what Mary has. Okay, Mary, I'll bring you back to tell us.
Okay, right.
Sorry, just before Councillor Jordan speaks, can I just explain the protocol with relation to a member moving a motion to refuse? Would that be agreed?
Yes, by all means.
Yeah. The position is that members of the committee must not predetermine any matter which comes to the committee for decision. However, it's entirely permissible for committee members to be predisposed towards a particular outcome with regards to an application, provided they don't make up their minds on how to vote before formally considering the details of the application, listening to the officer presentation and to the full debate on the application. It's good practice for members to seek advice from the planning officer before the meeting on the wording of any potential motion a member may be considering putting before the committee. They must, however, listen to the debate and consider all the facts before deciding whether or not to move that motion. It's the role of the planning officer to provide professional, objective and comprehensive advice to the members on the wording of any potential motion. So with that in mind, I think if we can hear from Councillor Jordan.
If I can come back in, I have sought advice from the planning officer and I have listened to the debate, and I would still like to move the motion that I have been advised on.
Chair, can I ask a question, please?
Yeah, I'll bring it. Go on, Ian.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Ian Lewis. Can I ask, the legal officer just read a statement out. What prompted that statement, please? Because I can't see anything different from what we've had on previous planning applications from what the legal officer said. What prompted that statement to be read to us then? Is there a concern?
The reason that statement is being read is that, just to make it clear, that because we're now in virtual meetings, that some concern is being raised by members of the public about members appearing to sort of come forward with a motion that's already been pre-prepared. So I'm just taking the opportunity, and do take the opportunity at any virtual meeting. I think I have said this before, but perhaps it was at a meeting when Councillor Lewis wasn't in the meeting, but will be standard practice to read that out where any motion to refuse is moved against officer advice.
Right, perhaps we could have that at the beginning of the meeting as well then, Chair, please.
It might be equally as appropriate, yes. It isn't the first time that that legal advice has been given at our meeting. I can't remember when the last time was. I know you weren't at the last meeting because you were an objector on an item. Are we content with that? So maybe I'll bring the legal in at the beginning so that we're clear. Mary, can we hear your?
Sure can. Right. Okay. So my motion is that the development proposed is of a scale that does not relate well to surrounding properties. The new dwelling would result in an unacceptable relationship with neighbouring properties and would give rise to a loss of privacy as a result of the positioning of windows, particularly in the rear elevation, that would result in overlooking of adjacent private garden areas to the detriment of the amenities of the occupants of neighbouring properties. Furthermore, having regard to the size of the plot and the relationship of the proposed new dwelling with the site boundaries, the development would result in a cramped appearance that would be detrimental to the character of the area. Therefore, the development proposed would be contrary to policy HS4, criteria 1 and 2, criteria for new housing development, and policy GB7, infill villages in the green belt of the Wirral Unitary Development Plan.
Okay, and I'll ask if we have a seconder at this point for that. Ian?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I hadn't made up my mind prior to the discussion, but having heard the arguments put forward by Councillor Povall and Councillor Jordan, I'm happy to second that motion.
Okay. Okay. So we have a motion in front of us. Any contributions from the committee on now they've heard what the motion is? Not yes. I'll just make a comment. I noticed in the motion we were talking about properties, overlooking of properties, and in her presentation, Councillor Povall mentioned overlooking to Thornton House. I don't think that's the case at all. Having seen the elevation put up by case officer, and the fact that the walnut tree is and screening on that boundary is to be retained. I think the impact on the listed building is negligible. She also mentioned Sandy Lodge, which is a fair old distance away and can't possibly be considered to be overlooked. In terms of whether it's cramped or not, it may or may not be. It strikes me the issue does revolve around whether the overlooking from the first floor bedrooms into the lower garden of the bungalow is sufficient to trigger a non-compliance, if you like, with paragraph 127F of the National Planning Policy Framework, which Kathy referred to in terms of trying to create places with a high standard of amenity for existing and future users. Officers have determined that because the existing user of the bungalow is happy with being overlooked at first floor level, that they've afforded that minimum weight. Obviously, it's a matter for each member individually to decide what weight to give these issues. Kathy, did you want to speak to it, or were you just indicating that you wanted to say? Do you want to say anything more? If not, and if no other members wish to speak, we'll vote. Kathy.
Yeah, Chair. No, it's just that I felt that under the circumstances with it being greenbelt and that basically we should afford the same weight as we would have if it was a third-party applicant and not the person who's actually building, because they've got, in my view, a prejudicial interest in being overlooked because they have a financial gain. Whereas if it was somebody else and the property was being built, if the land was owned by somebody else, we'd have afforded more weight because it would have been a third party and not the applicant.
Steve Foulkes.
Yes, Chair. I haven't now heard the reasons for refusal. I think the elected members use what I would refer as a scattergun approach. It's basically thrown everything in. It may have been wiser for the reason for refusal to be of more concentrated nature. I think that would be almost embarrassing to try and defend at an appeal. So I think it probably needed work on, but that's what we've got before us. So that will persuade my judgment. And I think someone's talking about property values. Property values aren't a material consideration when we come to planning applications. As someone said, when someone comes to view the house, will they buy it for a different price? That's certainly not a material consideration. So,
can I just come back that when the councillors sought advice, their concern was not solely for the bungalow. They did have concerns in relation to other properties. In and around the application site as well. So that's why it doesn't specifically refer to a single property. I was asked around the impact on other properties as well.
Okay. Ian Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. Again, apologies for not being present at the last meeting as a committee member, but I understood it that once a member had moved a resolution either for approval or refusal, we go to a vote. We don't debate that resolution, as Councillor Foulkes has been trying to do.
I'm afraid I'm afraid you've been misinformed, old boy. If there's a motion that put before us very early on, I decided that if there was questions or debate to be had on a motion, then I wasn't going to curtail debate. I know that had been custom and practice in the past, but every other committee of the council debates motions, and there's no reason why this committee shouldn't either. That now having been clarified, we have a reason for refusal given by Councillor Jordan, seconded by Ian Lewis. Nobody else wishes to come in. Okay, we will take a vote. Okay, voting will be for, against, or abstaining. Sorry, did somebody indicate? No. Voting will be for, against, or abstaining on the motion. The solicitor will call your name. Please turn on your camera and microphone and say who you are before voting. Members should only cast a vote if they have heard the planning officer's presentation and the debate in relation to this matter in full and have not had any technical difficulties during this item. In the event that you have had problems hearing the discussion, you should not vote and indicate not voting when called.
Thank you, Chair. And just to clarify, this is a motion to refuse. So on that basis, can I call on Councillor Berry?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Bruce Berry, voting for the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Corkhill?
Councillor Andy Corkhill voting against the motion.
Thank you. Councillor George Davis?
Councillor George Davis voting against.
Thank you. Councillor Foulkes?
Councillor Steve Foulkes voting against the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Frost?
Cllr Sam Frost voting against the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Hayes?
Councillor Steve Hayes voting against the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Hodson?
Councillor Catherine Hodson. I've heard the debate. I'm voting for the motion to refuse.
Thank you. Councillor Jordan?
Councillor Jordan voting for the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly?
Councillor Stuart Kelly voting against.
Councillor Kenny?
Councillor Brian Kenny voting against the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Lewis?
Voting for.
Thank you. Councillor Stuart?
Councillor Stuart, I have had the debate and I'm voting against the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Whittingham?
Councillor Stuart Wiscombe, having heard the debate, voting against the motion.
Thank you. And Councillor Williams. And Councillor Williams, if you press star and then 6, you should be able to come in and be heard.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can see you.
Yeah. I missed the start of this, so I'm not voting.
Right, okay, thank you.
Right.
That's for the motion to refuse. There's 4 votes, and against there are 9 votes.
Okay, that motion has failed. Is there a further motion from the floor?
Chair, sorry for not typing in. I'd be happy to move the motion for the proposal.
I think it's we're seeking members to move and second the motion as put forward in the officer's report.
Yeah, or further motions indeed, but Steve Foulkes has moved approval, and Stuart, you're on, and Stuart Whittingham has seconded it. Any further comments? We've heard everything we need to hear. In this case, once again, voting will be for, against, or abstaining on the motion. The solicitor will call your name. Please turn on your camera and microphone and say who you are before voting. Members should only cast a vote if they have heard the planning officer's presentation and the debate in relation to this matter in full and have not had any technical difficulties during this item. In the event that you have had problems hearing the discussion, you should not vote and indicate not voting when called.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Berry.
Councillor Bruce Berry voting against it.
Thank you. Councillor Corkhill.
Councillor Andy Corkhill voting for.
Thank you. Councillor Davies.
Councillor George Davies voting for.
Thank you. Councillor Foulkes.
Get there in the end. Councillor Foulkes voting for the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Frost.
Cllr Sam Frost voting for.
Thank you. Councillor Hayes. Councillor Hayes.
Sorry, I had a bit short of my mic. Councillor Steve Hayes voting for the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Hodson.
Councillor Catherine Hodson voting against the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Jordan.
Voting against the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Stuart Kelly voting for.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny.
Councillor Brian Kenny voting for.
Thank you. Councillor Lewis.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Stuart.
Councillor Paul Stewart voting for.
Thank you. Councillor Whittingham.
Councillor Stuart Whittingham voting for.
Thank you. And Councillor Williams.
I'm not voting.
Thank you. Okay. That's 9, 4 and 4 against with 1 not voting.
Okay, thank you very much. That application then has been approved. That concludes our agenda then, members, and I'll declare the meeting closed.